Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. I have always wanted to know this. Preemptive, like, I believe Hinduism is older than Judaism. Let's just find out quick. Oh God, I have to type quickly so that nothing embarrassing comes up. Hindu age 4,000 years. Jewish age 4,000 years. More than 4,000 years. Nearly 4,000 years. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm really interested because we know how Christianity starts. We know how Islam starts. Judaism, it's so much older than the two that I have no clue how it started. No idea. I know like the Moses stuff, but I'm talking about the stuff that actually happened.
A century ago, a conflict arose which would quickly become one of...
Who knows? Maybe Moses was a real person. I'm just saying there's no way he parted the Red Sea. All right, come on. All right, so I'm very interested as to where Judaism, the Jewish people came from.
A century ago,
throw your phones away.
Conflict arose which...
Sorry, original link to the video, top of the description. I'm just too excited. Geohistory, awesome channel. Love you, Geohistory.
A century ago, a conflict arose which would quickly become one of the most complex and controversial in the world. A conflict between two very different people for the same territory. To understand its origins, let's retrace the history of the Jewish people on a
Egypt has something to do with it.
map. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict will be explained in a following video. The story begins in 750 BC when the Near East was divided into many small kingdoms and city-states. They were wedged between the Assyrian Empire to the north and Egypt in the south. Among them was the Kingdom of Israel, whose people worshipped several gods, including Yahweh. In 722 BC, the capital Samaria fell to the Assyrian Empire. Part of the population then fled to the Kingdom of Judah and Jerusalem.
Ooh, Phoenicians, that's voice crack, that's cool. Doesn't Carthage kind of see this as their homeland right here, or did?
Part of the population then fled to the Kingdom of Judah and Jerusalem, but they would be followed by the Assyrian army as they continue their expansion towards the south. The region then remains under their...
My God, I have to shut up. I really...
Then fled to the Kingdom of Judah, fell to the Assyrian Empire. Part of the population then fled to the Kingdom of Judah and Jerusalem, but they would be followed by the Assyrian army as they continue their expansion towards the south. The region then remains under their control for a century until the fall of Nineveh to the Babylonians. Egypt and Babylon would then compete for territories of the old empire, but the Babylonians quickly take over and project their power in the region. Jerusalem resists this new rule and rebels. The Babylonian army then returns to besiege and destroy the city. Much of the population is then moved to the capital. In 539 BC, the Achaemenid Persian Empire takes over Babylon. The new king authorizes a free passage for Judeans, prompting many to return to Jerusalem. They would then rebuild the city and organize the foundations of Jewish culture by building the Temple of Solomon and writing the Torah.
It's already 390 BC. Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Oh, you will? He'll react to that, sure? That was my other video, guys, sorry. I got distracted there. But I thought, like, you know, weren't they slaves of Egyptians? And I'm getting that wrong, I guess.
In 334 BC, the ambitious young
Alexander.
Macedonian king Alexander the Great set out with his army to conquer the known world. In just over 10 years, he rakes up a huge territory and builds many cities. But exhausted by conquest, he died at age 32 in Babylon.
Maniac. No, he's...
without an heir of governing age. The empire was then divided by his generals into various Hellenic kingdoms. Judea came...
Interesting. So I know that Cleopatra was essentially Greek, right? And so prior to Alexander's conquests and territory falling after he died,
without an heir of governing
Is that the first time an Egyptian pharaoh is on the is in Egypt? The 300s BC?
age. The empire was then divided by his generals into various Hellenic kingdoms. Judea came under the control of the Ptolemaic dynasty. A Jewish community settles in the new city of Alexandria, and the Torah is translated into Greek. Following a war against the Seleucid dynasty, Hellenic and Jewish culture developed friction to the point that one of the altars of the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem was dedicated to the worship of Zeus. A traditionalist anti-Hellenic Jewish militia is organized and takes control of Jerusalem in 164 BC. Jewish militia is organized of Zeus. A traditionalist anti-Hellenic Jewish militia is organized and takes control of Jerusalem in 164 BC. The temple is restored and the kingdom of Judea becomes independent. A century later, the region was conquered by the Roman army. The Judeans would organize two major revolts against the new regime, which were violently crushed. The first revolt in 66 provoked the siege of Jerusalem, followed by the destruction of its temple. The only wall of the enclosure that survived would become known as the Wailing Wall. During the second revolt, the city was razed and a great part of the population slaughtered. This time, the Jews were forbidden a safe passage to Judea. Many migrate to Galilee and across the empire. Towards the end of the Roman Empire, Christianity was the dominant religion.
I am amazed that they're still hanging on. Obviously, Judaism is still a thing today, and they've been persecuted, obviously, many times since then, and they're still around. That is pretty darn impressive.
And Jerusalem a place of pilgrimage. The largely well-to-do Jewish community in the Mediterranean basin began to be persecuted, especially in the Visigoth and Byzantine empires. In the 7th century, following the birth of Islam, begins an Arab conquest.
Muhammad.
In some cases, Jews support the conquest in the hope of better conditions. They are tolerated by the Arabs, and only polytheistic peoples are forcibly converted. In Jerusalem, the Dome of the Rock is built, making the city holy to the three monotheistic religions. The Arabs arrive in the Iberian Peninsula, which they call Al-Andalus. Here, 5% of the population is Jewish, ushering in a golden age of culture. Meanwhile, in Europe, Jews are not only tolerated as people who witnessed times before Christ, but also as the sole traders between Catholics and Muslims. This allows Jews to gradually establish themselves in all of Western Europe.
That's interesting. That they're like Jewish people. They survived this long, and they're almost used as like a mediator. And like, all right, I'm not talking to the Muslims. I'm not talking to the Christians. All right, let's have the Jewish people in between. And I also hear like many centuries later, in like the Middle Ages up to a few centuries later, that a lot of certain jobs like weren't seen as like moral for Catholics, like something like even like accounting, right? Or certain business, whatever, where they didn't want to get rid of that industry. And so Jewish people kind of filled gaps in a lot of certain jobs. And so they seem to be like, first of all, impressive that they're still around. And now they're just like, all right, they're here. And whatever jobs that we're not comfortable doing, we'll have them do.
Jews to gradually establish.
Let me know if I'm speaking ridiculous, all right? Let me know if I'm wrong.
Themselves in all of Western Europe. In the 11th century, the Seljuk Turks, a Central Asian people, began their expansion and reached Jerusalem. They persecute Christians and forbid pilgrimages to the city. In response, Christians in Europe organized crusades, military and religious expeditions to the Holy City. Along the way, they massacred Jewish communities who they now consider a deicide people who killed Jesus Christ. In 1347, Genoese merchant boats from Kaffa helped.
Imagine how ruthless the Christian crusaders must have been to Jewish people over there. If like they're all revved up for the Pope and everything calling you to go over there, They've been on a long trek, and now they see you as literally killing their prophet, their big guy, big daddy Jesus. I mean, they must have ruthless. That must have allowed the most terrifying human aspects to just run rampant.
Spread the Black Death. In 5 years, the disease wreaks havoc in Europe, killing almost half its population. A rumor spreads accusing Jews of poisoning wells, resulting in their persecution mainly along the Rhine and Rhone region and their eventual expulsion. In Spain, the Reconquista ends. The Catholic kings serve an ultimatum to the Jews to either...
That would be an awesome alternate history video topic. What if the Black Death never happened? Because I wonder if in the end it had a positive outcome on European history, and now I sound psychotic.
Convert or leave. The Catholic kings serve an ultimatum to the Jews. Spain, the Reconquista ends. The Catholic kings serve an ultimatum to the Jews to either convert or leave. The majority who choose to leave settle along the Mediterranean coast, mainly in the Ottoman Empire, where they are welcomed. The Poland-Lithuania Commonwealth becomes a haven for Jews from Western Europe due to favorable migration policies. In the 17th century, the region hosts more than 300,000, or about half of the Jews in the world. But everything changed in 1648 with the revolt of the Cossacks' Ukrainian presence against the nobility and the Jews. They accused the Jews of having a privileged relationship with those in power. More than 100,000 Jewish people are killed or flee the region. This episode would weaken the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, besieged on all sides by neighboring powers. In 150 years, the regime falls and its territory. This episode, more than 100,000 Jewish people are killed or flee the region. This episode would weaken the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, besieged on all sides by neighboring powers. In 150 years, the regime falls and its territory is carved up. The Jewish community is divided, and 900,000 of them find themselves in the Russian Empire, where they are not welcome. They quickly become the targets of attacks called pogroms, a Russian term meaning devastation. Given the lack of response from authorities, these attacks become more frequent and deadly. The Jews then emigrate to the United States and Western Europe, which in the meantime has improved their living conditions. It is in this context that the first Zionist Congress is held in Basel in 1897, contemplating the founding of a new homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine. But the Ottoman Empire is fiercely opposed to the project.
Isn't that just openly saying, hey, we're going to invade you? Like, I don't get why just because you had this a few thousand years ago and it's in your book, that it's like, hey, you see that piece of land that's over there? Let's take it. That's ours. That just seems kind of scummy.
A few years later, the First World War breaks out. The Ottoman Empire fought alongside Germany. When the Allies were in trouble,
it's like, why not like talk about making a Jewish state somewhere that's going to be less, you're just asking for conflict. It's like you could have picked any place. Obviously, a Jewish homeland, especially after the Holocaust and all of the persecution for thousands of years, you can't blame a lot of Jewish people for wanting that, and they should get it. But why did you pick the worst? Like, I cannot think of a worse place to place it if you're going to cause conflict. That just, so much of the, there would have been problems in the Middle East regardless, okay? No area of the world is perfect. But it blows my mind that the Western powers decided to put the Jewish state just like, boom, right here. All right, it's done. It's like, yeah, that was reckless, in my opinion. Let me know if you think I'm wrong.
Trouble and desperately sought further support, the then British Minister of Foreign Affairs, Arthur Balfour, wrote an open letter promising a Jewish homeland in Palestine in return for Jewish support. In parallel, they support the Arab rebellion against the Ottoman Empire by promising them independence in the liberated territories. At the end of the war,
Why am I
the map
blanking on his name? Lawrence of Arabia.
of the Middle East was redrawn and divided up between
Okay. So Arabs, if you help us knock out the Ottomans to help us in the war, we'll give you your own place. Really? Oh my God, yes, thank you. Let's go. Let's kick out the Ottomans, the Turks. Let's kick them out of here. We did it. All right, guys, thank you. So how are we going to draw these borders? Why did you already draw this? Oh, right, about what we said. Yeah, we're not going to do that. Oh, and we're putting Israel right here. What? It's just a double smack in the face. It's like, oh yeah, about what we said. No.
the European powers. Palestine comes under the British mandate, marking the beginning.
Again, I don't want to say that, like, this is the classic argument of, people assume anywhere that's unfairly conquered was therefore perfectly peaceful before. Of course not. I'm not saying if this didn't happen, the Middle East would be all perfect. Eventually, you would find oil there, and with that, riches and a lot of stuff breaks out. But man, I think that point in history right here, 1918, was a giant starting point for a lot of the stuff in the Middle East, and America has not helped it out.
European powers. Palestine comes under the British mandate, marking the beginning of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Really cool video, guys. I love geohistory. Hope you enjoyed that, learned something, or can teach me something. Chin up if you're not doing well. You'll be good soon. Join the Discord, guys. Bye.